All right, we're continuing. We're continuing what we learned before. And if you remember what we learned before, was the whole idea of how how the problems that we have is because Hashem gives us the problems. And a lot of times the reason that we look at the world improperly and we make our own problems is because that's the way that God wants it to be. He wants us to have free choice. He put us in the world where there's 99% chance that we won't make the right choice. That's like the Jews were in Egypt. In fact, when the Jews were in Egypt, it was impossible for them to make the right choice. They were stuck in Egypt. They thought they were slaves. Their whole identity came from the, how do you say, their whole identity came from the, how do you say, the axiom that they're slaves. So every decision they made was, what does a slave do? Is not what a slave do in this situation. What would I do in this situation? Right? What should I do? It's just automatic. They were slaves. And all of a sudden Moses came and he took them all out. Well, the same thing is now we are again in Egypt, and God put us there. And just the same way God put us there, and he put the Jews back in Egypt back then. And also God will take us out of Egypt. And this is going to explain to us the whole idea of the menorah. The menorah. Then all of the Jews will shine like a menorah, but it has to be done one at a time. It can't be an en masse thing that all of a sudden all the Jews are just going to say, wow, let's just follow. Here is the light, here's the way, here's the man. Every Jew is going to have to decide on his own. And even when Moses comes along and he does 10 plagues and he splits the sea and he brings bread from heaven and he gives them the Torah at Mount Sinai, and God is revealed to everybody. But nevertheless, everybody has to make their own decisions. We see that's what happened. As soon as Moses wasn't there, they all worshiped the golden calf. So that's not very promising to us, right? If they didn't do it and they had all these proofs and they worshiped the golden calf, so what chance have we got? So one answer is that that's a good question. It's a really good question. But we can learn from the past. And not only that, God did promise there's going to be a future redemption and all the Jews are going to go out. He promised it. And in fact, that's like the first of the 10 commandments. I am God that took you out of Egypt. That's what God does, is that's like God's hobby. He takes Jews out of Egypt. And especially when the whole future of the world depends on the Jews, right? We have to get this message across to the world that there's a God and he cares for everyone, and everyone has to make their own personal decisions whether or not to follow God or not. And if you don't follow God, you know what happens? Absolutely nothing. Here you see what happens. Nothing. Here, all these people are doing all sorts of bizarre sins, and God enlivens them and he gives them success, and they're all smiling on television and everything like that. The idea is to decide for the truth because it's the truth. Because you want to live a life of truth. Of course, I mean, eventually there are, negative side effects. You see that all these people that they end up destroying themselves. Nothing to do with all these woke people. They don't want to have any children, so that's it. No more children. They'll do all these weird, diversions of the power of procreation, and they just divert all that energy to having pleasure. Who knows what in the world they're doing? But it's not to have children. So eventually there won't be any children. There won't be any carrying on. There won't be any life. So eventually it comes out against everybody, like the Tower of Babel. They decided they wanted to build this big edifice, and they used the powers of Kabbalah and secrets and things like that with every stone, and they had peace between them, and there was harmony, and that was it. Everything was going for them. And all of a sudden, they changed their language. One guy didn't understand the other one, and he threw a rock at him, and another protected. He stood on this guy's side and at that guy's side, and it was like World War Zero. They just started the precursor of World War One. Everybody just took sides and they were all bashing each other, and that's it. So eventually these things implode on themselves. But meanwhile, people have free will. It's been going on for 2,000 years now. Jews have free will to do whatever they want to, and most of them have been opting out to not do what God wants. But our generation is different, and now, and also because we're reading what the Rebbe says, so we should understand that first of all, there is such a thing as redemption, and everybody wants it, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Everybody wants it, and it's going to happen. Okay, so that's what it says. God took us out of Egypt. Omar, it says, that God took us out of Egypt. Nikra, Erebus, or it's right. Egypt is called the lowest place. I want to get to where we were yesterday. We talk about the shuruk. Remember, it says that the Jewish people are like a shura. A shureka is a stem of grapes, and God put the Jewish people in. And this is Anatita Nataticha Shorek. It says, I have planted you as a grapevine. Kula Zera Emes, you are all a seed of truth. Where did this come from? I think it's from Isaiah, from one of the prophets. We looked it up yesterday and I forgot. Afilu, even Kasharam Nofel, even when a person falls down below, Chas v'shalom, God forbid, Lataivos, to all sorts of bizarre desires, and he becomes a shuruk. Remember we learned it yesterday? It's 3 dots, but they're at a slant underneath the letter. There's a slant, ba'kamimos, and they're slanted. Afal nevertheless, kula zera emes, nevertheless, the Jewish people are all true. The yochal ishtanos, and they are able to change. The yochal, and they are able lasot mizeh segol, and they can make from themselves a segol. Segol, we said, are 3 dots. Remember I showed you the picture, 2 dots on the top and 1 below? So not. So, 1 second, 1 minute. Someone is making a dove imitation there. Here we go. There we go. Nevertheless, all of the Jewish people are all true. And they can change. And again, I want to stress this idea. What is this note? There's a note on the top. What does the note say? It says, yeah, we'll talk about this later. Okay. So it says that, okay, remember we said before, the Jewish people have to get it together. And when they do, then that's an example for the whole world. Then the whole world. So if you see any problems in the world, I mean, really, you can blame it on the Jews, but not on the Jews that they plan to do it this way and they have a world plan to take over the world and things like that. That is definitely not true. I mean, Jews do not get along. Jews are very problematic people, right? And they do make a lot of trouble. But one thing about the Jews, they do not get along with each other either. Every Jew has to just look at the Israeli politics. They got so many parties in Israeli politics. I think there must be like 100 parties in them, that they made a law that you have to have a certain, massive number of votes and get 2 seats, enough for 2 seats in the Knesset in order to be in. There's no such as 1-seat parties anymore. The Jews just don't get along with each other. They don't get along with themselves. The Jew doesn't get along with himself. So it says, nevertheless, the Jews can change the yochol lasot mizeh segel, and they can change from the shuruk, which is 3 lines on a slant, and there's crooked. They can make it into a segel, which a segel is like a pyramid, like an upside down pyramid. It shows on symmetry, and when they call it straightness, segel. Nowadays, things are so crazy that the word straight has come to imply something not good. Right? A person's a straight guy. Straight. Segula mikol amin. The Jewish people are the choice of a segel is this punctuation, this vowel in Judaism, the sound. But a segula means also special. You will be the segula. You will be the special. The how do you say, the charm of all of the people of the world. The Cain who Mitzrayim, so it was in Egypt. God said, I will go down with you Jews in Egypt, and I will take you out of Egypt. Anochi Misha Anochi, this is higher than any name of God. Ered. Now, this is a very, very basic principle of Judaism, is that God is infinitely, infinitely close to us, closer than we are to ourselves. God creates us. And also God cares about us. God cares about us. Every person in the world, God cares about. Zanum, Farnish the call, it says, Metiv the call. We say on our the blessings after eating, that God provides for everyone that God provides food for. Everyone you see that's alive today is alive because God is providing for him food. And if God is providing for him food, why? Because God benefits everybody. He cares about everybody. That's a very basic message of Judaism. That's with that message is we're going to take over the whole world. What do you mean take over the whole world? That the whole world is going to realize, hey, God is infinitely good. We have to worship the God of Israel. And all of nations will start doing the 7 Noahide commandments. There won't be any more religions. There won't be any more religions. That everyone will just do good because it's the source of life. It's a source of harmony. It's a source of meaning. Every instant will be challenging, interesting. It'll, how do you say, activate every human being. So it says that's when God says, "I will come down and I will take you out." Anochi El, God said, "I came down and brought you into Egypt, and I will come down also to take you out of Egypt." HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ozro, God will help us. Begam Oleh, and He will also elevate us. Shebechinas, it says, but Gam Allah, and also all this level of Gam means additional, also, will also be an elevation. In other words, there seems to be something in addition to God, right? There's God, and there's also the world, and there's Paro, and of course there's me, and there's life, and there's problems, but there's also God. God is one of the players in the thing, maybe a very major one, maybe not at all, who knows, maybe it's just imagination, and you can call on him once in a while. And here we're saying no, that there won't be anything additional, that we'll see that everything in the world is being created from God's goodness. In other words, all there is God. That's what it means. That's what it means. It's true from Egypt. You redeemed us. Hikula Zera Emes, because all of them, all the Jewish people are true, like we said before. Okay, therefore, that's why you took us out of Egypt, God. Shagula, that's redemption. Yehiyeh will be Hashem Elokeinu. It will be, God will be our God. And lose our power, our life, will feel that it's not a separate thing. It doesn't come from, what is it, the evolution, or from monkeys, or however it says. But rather, we'll feel that we are being alive and created by God's goodness. Mibeit avodim, from the house of servitude. Meshubad latayvos, we are in now the house of servitude. We are slaves to our desires. Right? Those people who say that they're atheists or whatever, they're atheists, they don't believe in God. So, good, like I said before, they're really not. There's no such thing as an atheist. It's called an atheist. I call it. What are they? It's called. I made it up, I think. A capital I. They believe in themselves. They believe that they themselves are God, which that's okay. That, God gave us the option to do that. God gave us the option to do that. But they say we're free. But the fact of the matter is they're not free. Because what do you mean you're free? From what are you free? You're free from acting like me. Okay, you don't want to act like the Bible. You don't want to act like this. 100%. No way. But how do you act? I mean, you have to decide something. What are you going to do? What do you want to do? So I do what I want. So if so, you're a slave to your desires. Whatever pops up in your mind, you do. So it ends up what people do is what everybody else does. Or what they're told to do. Huh? What they're told to do, what some dictator or someone tells them to do, this is what we do. And so any insane thing that you think is going to be different, right? You're different than everybody else, and you find out you're not different at all. You're just doing what everybody else does. If you want to be weird, you want to dye your hair green, and that this guy dyed it green, so I'll dye my hair purple, right? Purple. So it ends up that you're a slave to your desires. Your desires, I got to be different than everybody else. There's no goal. There's no truth. It's pulling you. Right? The people don't know what they want, and they don't know what they're supposed to do, and they don't know what they desire to do, what they have to do. They don't. Professor Viktor Frankl explains this very, very exactly and beautifully, tragically, unfortunately. because people have no purpose, they've got no meaning. So it says that's what a purpose becomes a slave to his own desires. And God will redeem us from this. That's how it was the redemption. How it's called B'chareim Harag. All the firstborn of the Egyptians were killed. Ki ba'olam in the world called Peter, called Rechem, the first one born is called the first. The Cain benefesh, and also the soul. What's the firstborn? The firstborn is your ideas. V'zeu called B'chareim. That's what it means. All of their ideas. This is the Seichlim Shel Mitzrayim. These are the ideas that come from Egypt. Shekol echad rotzeh lahamid rotzono, that everybody wants to fulfill his will and to justify it. Right? Like I said before, if you're not connected to the truth and you think there is no truth and everybody is God and everybody makes up their own Bible, so it ends up that you're God, so you are forced to do what you want. You know what? I remember when I was a young kid, it just popped in my mind. I thought, maybe I'm being directed to do everything I do. Maybe some other power, somehow is putting these ideas into my mind of what to do. To wake up in the morning to this. So I said, okay, so what can I do? I'm being completely controlled. If I'm being controlled, so what should I do? How can I fool this guy or this power, whatever it is putting these ideas? How can I fool him? So I said, I know what I'll do. I'll start to get up, but I'll start to turn right, but then suddenly I'll turn left. I said, no, he must have put that idea in my mind also. So what do I do? How can I get out of this thing? I thought to myself, listen, if I'm being controlled, so no matter what I do is being controlled, so I just forget about it. I just live my life. No matter what I do, it's going to be controlled. So I'll just live my life. Whatever my life is to be lived, I'll live it. What should I live now? So I'm living my life in this tension and this paranoia, whatever, all the time. That's also being put into my mind. But the fact of the matter is that there is truth. And the truth, we have free will to choose the truth or not to choose the truth. Right? There is absolute good, absolute bad. We can choose to avoid the absolute bad and absolute. How do we know what's absolute bad? That's what the Torah is for. How do we know the Torah is true? Listen, the Jews, at least they claim that it was given to them, 3 million people, by God directly. And also, in this Bible, it says that it didn't help, right? That the Jews all saw God and everything, and they did exactly what opposite of what God wanted. So we see that human beings have free choice, free will, but they can choose the truth, as hard as it is. It says that's what it means that you killed the firstborn of Egypt, the firstborn. Nowadays, what's in Egypt? What's Egypt? Egypt is so bad nowadays. Egypt is not so bad. Right? I mean, I wouldn't want to live there, but it's not, it doesn't, they don't keep millions and millions of slaves over there working on their hard labor. They don't do that, at least as far as I know, they don't. So who exactly are what are the firstborn of the Egyptians that are going to be killed now? That was the last of the 10 plagues. Is the firstborn of the Egyptians are our own devices, our own, I'd say, mind that we're trapped inside of. And the firstborn are the first thoughts, the first urges that we have. That God will destroy this. What do you mean he'll destroy? That they will fall from their level. But Ratzona Shenikra Misa and their desires, which is called death. In other words, we'll still have these bad desires. We'll have desires to be decadent and to murder and to get depressed and to get aggressive and to all this. We'll have the desires, but they'll fall away. We'll say, that's stupid, right? That's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. But you, Jewish people, your firstborn, your first ideas in your mind, in what's called the godly soul, to think about the greatness of God, the tefillah, when you start to pray, it's called a bed. In the Zohar, there is in prayer, there's what's called a bed, a chair, a lamp, and a table. Oh, where do we get this from? It says that by Elijah the prophet, he used to stop by this lady's house and she made a little room for him. He used to travel around all the time. So she made a little room for him where he could sleep whenever he wanted to. And there was a bed and a chair and a lamp and a table. in a prayer, there are all of these four things, which is not to be going into now. The Rebbe goes into a different place. The previous Rebbe has Maimon that talks about this also, different levels of prayer. Of when we're okay, Rafida Tozov, that's what it means. And his chair or his, what is this, cushion is gold. Gold ga'alat. I have to look at this sentence in the Shalo yeh derech mikre. It won't be just by accident, machmas menio, that there won't be anything preventing us. Shazeu galut. This is exact. This is an exile. It says refido tozav galut. One second. Let me one moment, please. That's what it means. The idea of prayer. It says refido tozav. That's hinted at in the Song of Songs, chapter 3, sentence 10. It's talking about prayer. When we pray, then our thoughts change. That's what's calling killing the firstborn of Egypt. That's the thoughts, egotistical and worldly and confusing thoughts. Those are killed, and then the your firstborn, namely thoughts about you, God, they are encouraged. They alive. This is, where is this? And we go, oh. There. That's ga'alta. That's what it means. You redeemed. That's not part of the sentence. Ga'alta shalo yeh derech mikre. It won't be just an accidental thing. Machmas menio, because of any sort of preventions. Shezeu galus. Then you're still in exile. But the geula, there will be complete. Wait, once in a while now, when we pray in the morning, you get clear-minded. You have a clear mind, and all of a sudden you start to understand the meaning of the words. And you think about, wow, this is really relating to God, and God is creating me. God is really real, and you really pray. You feel a connection to the Creator. That's once in a while. Then all of a sudden your cellular phone rings. Then all of a sudden somebody asks you a question, and then all of a sudden you pop something to your mind, something else. Oh, maybe did I leave the water running or something? And that's it. Maybe I left my keys in the car. And it says in the future it won't be that way. It'll be refidat tozav, that the cushions on the bed, which you said is prayer, will be gold, and they'll be constant. There will be a redemption, a release, mishibud haparnasa, that we won't have to worry about any physical things in the world. Nothing will prevent our prayer. We won't have to run in order to work. We'll work, we'll have a job, but we'll realize that our work comes from God. There's a story that the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, he said to one of his Hasidim that was a working man, he had a shop, whatever, he said, I really envy you. Said, I sit and I learn Torah all the time, and you people are constantly coming into your store, and you can say a word of Torah to them, and you can say a word of encouragement to them. You can say, and you're constantly bringing godliness into this physical world. So that's the whole idea. We still will work, but we'll realize that our jobs that we're doing in the world is in order to use our limbs, our thoughts, our speech, our action for what God created it for. Below to feel without any prayer, but you have to pray first. You have to have your firstborn. In other words, your thoughts in the morning have to change. Without this, though, it's impossible that you can turn from bad, because you got no reason to. Exactly the opposite. You think that what is bad, there's no such thing as bad. Right? The only thing bad is something that stops me. But that's not true. God set up bad and good in the Torah and says clearly what bad and good is. But you have to be connected to God. You have to have a feeling that God is really real and that these ideas are really real. Forget about going to heaven or hell. We're not talking about that at all. Not at all. That's not what we're sure of, right? They say, what is it? The only thing you can be sure of is taxes and death. That's not so. That is definitely not so. The idea is we can be sure, and everyone wants to be sure that there's a creator and that his existence in the world is not by accident. It's meaningful, and every moment is meaningful. But you have to feel that there's a creator in order to feel this. If you don't feel that there's a creator, then the world has basically no meaning to it. Life has no meaning. It's just sort of floating around, right? And you can put meaning to it. I mean, logically, a person can understand there's good people that like to help other people. There's not, but those same good people can be easily derailed. Here, look at what it was in Nazi Germany, right? The people, even today, they can't believe that they did what the things that they did. That there are people over there in Germany that they're kind. Listen, before the Nazis stood up and took over, the Jews, it was one of the best places in the world for the Jews. 50% of the Jews were intermarried. Over they loved there's this Professor Sowell. You ever watch some? Once in a while, I watch it. He's a Professor Sowell, a black guy, right? A genius, such a wonderful speaker also, and he just has facts packed with facts, and somehow or other he looks accurately at history, and you have all these other people that are just bumbling around and fumbling around and grasping at all these false ideas, and he's really something, and he pointed this out. He said that in Germany before the war, it was probably the best place ever for Jews. There was acceptance and there was, the coexistence and all. But they had no real hold on what truth is. As soon as somebody stood up and said, okay, let's, Germany is above everything, and don't trust the Jews, that are parasites and this, all of a sudden they believed it. Everyone. Maybe there was some that didn't, but the majority, great, right? Happily grasped this. So it says, without a really clear connection to God personally, from your own decision, it's impossible really to turn from bad. Look, and therefore, tiknu vidu, and therefore we have every day we have what's called a confession prayer. Every day from the prayers, shakorim but tefillah that we read in the prayer, she's born. When you think about how low we are, shehu b'mitzrayim, that when I think about myself, how I right now am in Egypt, b'yidbon, and you think about how great God is and how I've really let him down, is what happens then? Yitcharet, then you will be regretful. Bavadai, certainly from bad. I want to stress over here another time, we're not talking about punishments and rewards. We're not talking about punishments and rewards. That's just like the, I mean, listen, there is certainly such a thing as punishments and rewards. But Maimonides, for instance, he says, but nobody knows who's going to get punished and who's going to reward. It could be that a person does one bad thing in his life and that wrecks the whole thing up and he gets punished, right? Especially if he's a big, high holy rabbi or something, and he does one bad thing, then that's it, straight to hell. And it could be the person's the worst guy in the world, and he does one good thing, says, wow, that was amazing. You did that one good thing, straight to heaven. So we don't know. So what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to don't worry about it. Just try to do as much good as possible. Because we're not talking about the afterlife. We're talking about this life right now. Right now is where God is. In the future, worry about yourself, but God is right now, every second. And that's why when you're connected to it, so connected to God, so you don't want to be connected so much to your own selfishness. You check yourself out. And that's the whole idea of what's called confession. Yitcharet, on the bad. It says, wow, I did so many bad things, right? Does that mean God is going to punish me? Obviously not. God is not going to punish me. But I did bad things. I mean, come on, a little bit of gratitude. God is giving me everything. When I think about how God is giving me anything, He's creating me creating me, giving me my eyes, my ears, my nose, my house, my family, my consciousness, everything. And look how I'm repaying Him. Once in a while I do a good thing. I pray a little bit. I do learn a bit of Torah, give some classes. Most of those things I do for myself anyway. What am I doing for God? Like when I start to think about it, and God He doesn't punish. God's not punishing me. We're not talking about, but on the other hand, He's patiently waiting for me to be a mensch, to be a normal person, right? a little bit of, how do you say, a little bit of common sense. A person that does so much, if a person would do so much for me, as God does for me, I would be jumping around. I would be shining his shoes. Therefore, a person, he starts to think about it, he starts to confess. Gd Menora. Then he starts to make himself into the menorah, one menorah from gold, from pure gold. he starts to realize that, wow, I'm being created by God, and God is really good, and God is infinitely forgiving. And even if I made all the mistakes possibly in the world, I'm what's called Yericha. I'm like on the base, on the lowest possible I could possibly be. But nevertheless, I'm gold. That the bottom and the top become one. The same God is creating me, is creating Lubavitcher Rebbe, is creating Moses, is creating Mashiach. But the main thing is it has to be total oneness, one with the other. Shalo yabit baras chavero, that you don't see anything bad in other people. And if you remember, we talked about that in the Birkas Kohanim. We talked about that before. That a lot of times when you come to really serve God, and you really start to get yourself together, and you're a kind person, and you're an intelligent person, and you give a lot of charity, and you do this, that you start to think, I made it. It says that the Baal Shem Tov, the last words of the Baal Shem Tov, were a sentence from Psalms. Al tava'eni regel gaiva. the first letters of Etrog. Al tava'eni regel gaiva. God, please do not bring me into egotism. The last words he said in his life. That's what they say. In other words, he realized that his whole life had been totally devoted to God, totally every instant. He helped who knows how many people, how many battles he fought, how he kept his, he says, he kept his love to God despite all of his enemies, just like King David. So,
Rabbi Bolton,
what?
Menachem is waiting, he said.
Might wait at the last one. Yes, it's true. There he is. Thank you. A person might think the last moment of his life, I did it. He prayed to God, please, God, don't bring me to this egotism. I mean, there's no doubt about it that he wasn't afraid of going to hell. He did this whole life, did only good, but that he didn't want 1 second to be false. Hainu Shiodea, that a person knows, therefore you have to look at another person as that other person, another person cannot possibly be worse than me. Maybe nobody is better than me, but nobody's worse than me. We'll see. Hainu Shiodea, he knows Yesh Maila. He knows that, in fact, everyone else has something that I don't have. There's a good quality in the Sheyesh Lamaila menorah. There is also above. There is a menorah, miksha, and it is one body. She'elyon yored lamata, that the top comes down and the bottom goes up. That bad, yored, sometimes comes down below, and it comes into a person bad, and the opposite. Sometimes asiyat eza mitzvah, a person does some good commandment, from a bad person, lifamim ola elevates him. Like I said before, it could be, I'm the top, I'm the greatest. Everybody has my picture on their wall, and I'm a big tzaddik. And it could be that I'll do one bad thing and bring myself down. We had this famous story of Yeravam ben Nevat. He was the greatest of the greatest Talmud scholar, a holy person, but he had a big fault. He was egotistical. And because of this little fault that he had, he was the highest. He fell down to be the lowest of the low. He's mentioned in Pirkei Avos that he is the example of a Jew that sinned and made others sin. The lowest of the low. On the other hand, there can be people that are the lowest of the low, and God elevates them to the highest of the high. But Kol Adam, every person has to say that anything that's lacking, anything that's bad happens is because of me. Tov, anything good happens, anything that I've got, Shemahim Yacher, maybe it comes from somebody else. Sha'olu Lamaila, V'ra Acherim, and the bad of other people, and you see bad of other people, Shemahu Shalom, maybe it comes from me. Shariyorid Lamata. Maybe because I did bad things, that's what had an influence on these people. You can't tell there's the butterfly effect, right? And that I do good things, it could be that comes from somebody else. Somebody did something good, and that gives me an influence of good. However it is, don't pride yourself with being great or holy or wonderful. Your connection about bad and good is only with God. Only with God. God is infinitely good. God looks at you how you are right now at this second. That's what's important. As then you will be truly, then it'll be one. Hayerech, the bottom, the lowest with the top. That every person yachzik atzmo will consider himself the bechinas yerech to be like the bottom. Ulechavero, and the other person, he's a perach, he's the high, he's the top. The chavero, and the other people, they should look at me the same way. That I am better than them.
Sunday night by wedding.
What?
Rabbi, back next year again. So,
what? Perach v'chavero lehepech. V'az yochol Aaron a Kohen. Then Aaron is able to light the candles. B'kala zayin neros, with all of these 7 candles. In other words, what? It's dependent, the Rebbe is saying, when a Jew realizes how great God is, how infinitely lucky that I am, that he is, to be created by God, how much we owe God, how little we pay God, how infinitely loving God is, that he doesn't really punish in any way what we do. He's always hoping that any second we'll just get it together. What does it mean to get it together? To look at every second in gratitude, to look at every second in a dynamic way that we have a responsibility to the Creator. What about if I'm better than another person? Says, don't worry about it. It's not so. You're better than another person. You learn more Torah, you do more commandments, you do less sins because God put those ideas into your mind. It's just because of the grace of God that you happen to be inspired by these good things, and the other person is not inspired. And in no way makes you better than anybody else. Everything you have is just a gift of God. And it could be even more that all the good things you have is because somebody else did something good, and that somehow or other had an influence on you. And if you see somebody else that's bad, it could have been that that's a result of all your bad things that you did. If so, nobody's better than anyone else. Every single second is brand new. That's what the Rebbe said. Remember earlier? Every second is brand new. God is taking us out of Egypt constantly, every second, giving us the opportunity. If so, everybody realizes, right, is humility and gratitude and energy and happiness. Then no one's comparing themselves to anybody else. They say there's a saying that if you point your finger at finger of blame at someone else, you got 3 fingers pointing at you. You ever see that before? You point at someone else, this finger is pointing at others, but these 3 fingers are pointing back at yourself. How do you like that? So it's like this. So I got to get the camera view over here. How do I do? Oh, here, like this. See, you point at someone else, you got 3 fingers pointing at you. So it ends up that you think you're pointing the blame at someone else, and that's removing the attention from you. But the fact of the matter is, it's exactly the opposite. So stop pointing and stop comparing yourself. If you want to compare yourself to God, and suddenly you realize how infinitely good God is and how much God loves you, He's creating you, then as the Jews become one. When they become one, then they can illuminate the world. Then Aaron lights the candles. Shu Kohen Gadol, he's the high priest. They call Rav Chesed, great kindness. Shekol a Chasidim. Oh, that all the kindness comes from him. All the love of God comes through him. Then Yochalam Sheikh Me'ava Rabba, he can draw down from this level of great love to what's called worldly love. 2 different levels of love, and God willing, we'll talk about this tomorrow, what they are. As then, Memela automatically will be Tocho Ratzo Vahava. Another sentence in Song of Songs is all innerness will be paved, quoted with love. Be Libo, revealing your heart, Karishfe Eish, like a flaming fire. We said before that fire, that love is like water, but there's also love that's like fire. And that comes from the fire of the gold of the menorah. We said that was gold was fear. That's also fire, because it gives you an appreciation of how great God is and how awesome God is and how our entire being depends on Him. That's what it means. That's what it means when Aaron lights up the candles. And what we have to do, Aaron, that this level of love will elevate them. So that's what we have to do on ourselves. First of all, we have to realize that we're gold, and that we're one piece. And even the lowest of Jews is no better than the highest of Jews. No matter, so if you're the lowest of lowest, don't worry about it. You have ample opportunity and chance to lift yourself up. And if you're the highest of the highest, don't get too egotistical, because you're in the same exact boat, same menorah as the lowest. And if you think you're different, then the whole menorah is wrecked up. If you think otherwise, that you're better than somebody else, or someone thinks I'm worse than everybody else, That's not so. God gives everyone ample opportunity to realize his greatness and what he is, and to do according to the Torah, to love him in the Torah. Then when everybody realizes this, then can come along Aaron, and that's the Mashiach, and light the lights. All of a sudden, all the Jews become activated for only doing good things, only doing good things, and saying good things, and thinking good things, and then the whole world will be a different, good, happy, prosperous, truly progressive world filled with love and meaning. We'll talk about this tomorrow, about the love of this, and then tomorrow we'll do this part over here about Moses gathering up all the fish to give to the Jewish people. The Jewish people complained about the manna, and God said, and to Moses, and Moses said, "What can I do? Gather up the fish, right? Fish for them." So we'll see what it means. We'll see what that means. Let's do the Yom Yom.